So if you've ever found yourself thinking, why can't I stop going to food? Why do I feel so out of control? Why can't I keep it together in other areas of my life, but food just takes me over and I spiral and I just can't seem to get a handle on it? And maybe you've tried the different diets, the different trainers, the willpower, and it doesn't seem to work. So you're not broken, you're not weak. This is not a willpower issue. What no one explained to me was that this pattern goes so much deeper. It's about your relationship to your body, to your emotions, to yourself. So today I want to explain to you why you feel so out of control with food, what's really running this pattern, and why trying harder hasn't worked, because you've probably tried everything. So this can be confusing to you if you're an ambitious woman. Maybe on the outside it looks like you have everything put together. You're going after your goals, your ambitions, and on the inside, you're struggling with food. Maybe you think everybody else seems okay around food. Why can't I just do the same thing? And I get it. That was me too. So on the outside, it looked like I was doing all of the right things. I was a chemist, went after teaching. I was doing all of these things on the outside, but on the inside, I was struggling with food, with my body, and with so much more. So I tried all of the things. I tried the diets, and then eventually I was looking for professional help. I tried personal trainers. I went to therapy. I saw a nutritionist, chiropractor, and I was trying all these things and nothing seemed to move the needle. No one ever really sat me down and explained to me that I was an emotional eater and this is what the pattern looks like, because I felt so out of control with food. My therapist even handed me a diet book, the South Beach diet. And that was just like, okay, no one seems to really understand what's going on here for me. And so I would swing from restriction to emotional eating and I couldn't get out of the loop. And one of the last times I kind of swung to just not caring, not doing anything, and just throwing away all restrictions, I hit this really big rock bottom. So after almost 2 years in therapy, seeing a nutritionist and a chiropractor and having gone to personal training, I wasn't any further ahead in my emotional eating journey. And I just needed to change. I needed to just shift my life because it just felt like I was wearing this heavy coat. I just felt so much shame and I wasn't getting ahead. All of the times that I would emotionally eat and feel out of control with food, that followed me around day in and day out. At every meal, at every interaction, I was living in my body. I was feeling the weight of this and the shame. And I just needed to break out of it. I needed to change something. And so I eventually moved to Korea. So that meant that my work went from being a chemist to a teacher. I moved countries and I thought this is going to be the breakthrough, but it actually was my biggest rock bottom because my emotional eating really intensified and I had to really start looking at the pattern. So when I moved to Korea, it wasn't just a light bulb moment. I'm an emotional eater. No one up until that point had actually said, you're an emotional eater. These are the signs. This is what's going on. This is the process. I had to start digging in and start researching and figuring things out. And I found this one resource that really laid it out. And I was like, oh my God, I'm an emotional eater. I'm not actually hungry all the time. I have true hunger and I have emotional hunger. And this was such a big aha for me. And it was really frustrating at the same time because no one sat me down and explained this to me. I had to figure it out myself. Even before I left for Korea, my therapist begged me to not move. And the funny thing is, if I hadn't moved, I wouldn't have dug in deeper to find out what this pattern was really about. And so that was the start of me putting all the pieces together. That was sort of the doorway to figuring out what was really going on. And so from that initial start of the journey, I started to see that food was never really the issue. It was this emotional hunger triggering me to go to food. And food was this way that I coped with discomfort, distress, unprocessed emotions with my traumas. And trauma is not a scary word. Trauma just means you experience an emotion, an event, and the emotions from that event, they are never fully processed or resolved. So they keep impacting you. And until you resolve it, it remains a trauma. And trauma can be from very small things to the big T traumas we think of. And, at that time, I could just see the connection between my emotions, my unresolved emotions, and how it was triggering me into emotional eating. It was my way of dealing with emotions. And I didn't have the vocabulary or the knowingness to know that, oh, these emotions were stuck in my body. They were unprocessed. They were traumas that were coming up, and then I was going to food. And I was regularly triggered because I had this bank of emotions from my childhood, from just all the way up until that point, that I didn't know how to move through. And so it was never really about the food. It was what I was using the food for. And so this is what no one ever really explains about emotional eating. You might hear, yeah, maybe you emotionally eat and you gain the weight to feel safe. But that's not the actual mechanism of what's going on making you gain the weight. In those moments you're triggered and you go to food, you're soothing yourself in that moment from the unprocessed emotions, from the discomfort, from the pain in your body. The food helps to numb you out. It helps to soothe you. It helps you to cope. And the reason it's doing this is that you never learned how to be with your emotions and to move through them. Our emotions are not wrong. We're meant to have emotions. As children, we have emotions. We're sensing the world. Our emotions give us information about the world. But most of the time, we would have had parents or caregivers or in our society that said, don't feel that way. Don't do this. And we're shamed for our emotions. Or we go through these events that we never learned how to move through our emotions. So we come home and we're sad, and maybe we're not allowed to be sad, or we feel like we're going to be rejected, or our parents don't have time for us, or they ignore us. And as children, developmentally, we cannot process those emotions on our own. We need our parents or caregivers to co-regulate with us, to have a calm nervous system to help us process those emotions and get to calm. And that's where we can start making sense of the emotion. Maybe you felt sad, someone hurt you at school. You have to feel through that emotion, and it informs your prefrontal cortex, the logic of your brain, to understand what happened. And your parents are meant to be there to help walk you through that. If we don't have this as children, we have to develop coping mechanisms. And food is really accessible. And we would have had the knowledge and the sense in our body that food feels good. It makes us feel good. It kind of gives us that dopamine kick. It takes away some of the pain. And so our brain is super smart, and it's going to say, go to the food, because this is what we know takes away the pain. Our parents are not helping us move through the emotions. They're not helping us take away the pain, but this food is. And so we go to the food, and as we repeat that, our brain says, I love this. Let's make it efficient. Just like you learn to drive a car from point A to point B, your brain says, oh, you go from distress and sadness to somewhat feeling okay, point A to point B. So as soon as you feel that pain, we're going to say go to food, and you're at point B, binging, emotionally eating, not really realizing how you got there. And so this is what's going on under the surface. And I didn't just read this in a book. This was through my own experience of experiencing my emotional eating, of seeing when I was triggered, seeing that these unresolved emotions were coming up, and later seeing this in my clients, and then further going into, I could see this connection with trauma. So I took a program in somatic psychotherapy, a trauma-informed program, and it didn't explicitly talk about emotional eating, but I knew from my work with myself and clients, this was the connection. Because our emotions are meant to guide us, and when we don't know how to actually move through them, we have to cope with them because they are painful in our body. There's sensations in our body, there's discomfort, and that uncomfortable loop stays stuck in our body. And so we need a way out. And so we're not fully aware of it, but that's what's happening. And so you can't willpower your way out of that. You have to move yourself through it, but you have to have an understanding of what's really happening. And so you might try to willpower a diet, or you might talk about your emotions. You think, yeah, I'm doing the steps, but we have to be focused on what is driving your behavior and catch those precise moments. And so as your brain learns this pattern, it's automatic. Anything that becomes automatic, it becomes subconscious, and it lives in our body. Our body just does the driving for us, just like we got from point A to point B when we were driving a car. Our body just automatically knows to go to the fridge and eat when we feel pain, and we get to point B, we're emotionally eating or binging. We might somewhat be conscious of we're sad, but the body takes over and you can feel like a robot and feel like you can't stop the process. And this is how we learn to regulate ourselves. This is how we learn to soothe ourselves, to get out of that emotional overwhelm into some state of calm. And then in our nervous system, it's at least bringing us back to a more neutral state. It's not fully resolving it because food cannot do that, but it gives us a band-aid to help us feel temporarily okay, temporarily soothe, but it's not the solution. And so this is especially true when I'm working with clients, because my clients are ambitious women. They are women that experience this in childhood, and it might seem like their family was okay, but like I said, trauma is on a spectrum. So if you were ignored or told to, be positive or, be resilient, there's no space for those emotions. And so you start blocking them out, but they don't go anywhere. They live in our body. The discomfort and pain, they exist, and we have to do something to take away that. And so this is also where, we have a lot of the women I work with, they're people pleasers. It's like you have to put yourself last. You have to take care of someone else. Your needs don't come first. You never learn about your needs. And so you suppress it, but it's uncomfortable. Your body's like, I need something. This is uncomfortable. I'm not getting my need met. And so you need to use food. And that's how you're meeting your need of soothing, of calm, of getting a break, of taking some time, of feeling okay. So when life slows down and there's more space for these emotions to come up, maybe it's the evening, at night, when you have some quiet time, the emotions will come up because they're like, oh, you have space to actually look at me. And that's where you might find yourself emotionally eating. If you're busy all the time, you can distract yourself, but that doesn't mean the urge isn't there or the emotions aren't there. And they're sort of under the surface waiting to pop up when you have that free space. So you always have to rest. At the end of the day, you're going to go towards food. And so this is why willpower fails, because it's not about willpower. You're not trying to pull the food, wrestle the food away and say, no, you're not being a good, person by having that food. It's not good for us. You're literally taking away a survival mechanism from yourself, something that helps you survive this discomfort and this distress without putting in what you actually need, without putting in a new way. And I'm not talking about going for a walk or calling your friend. You have to really meet this need at a deep body level where emotions live. This is not about replacing emotional eating, which is a distraction from your emotions, with another distraction. Those sort of quick fixes, go for a walk, distract, they help temporarily, but they're just putting off the emotional eating urge underneath. And so this is why willpower doesn't work. In that moment, maybe you willpowered to go for a walk, but it doesn't work long term. And so that moment when a trigger comes up that you can't willpower urge away, or that space and time at the end of the day, it's more powerful. Like I said, this pattern is now subconscious, and the subconscious has 95% power. So when it's triggered, it's going to take you over and you can't fight it. Willpower only accounts for 5% of that power of your mind. And so you're putting yourself in a position where you're trying to take away the food and you're fighting a bigger monster. You need to actually meet the needs in order to shift this pattern so that you are not just taking away what it already knows, you're putting in what it actually needs, so it will no longer want food. And that's what happened for me. When I did this, when I started doing this, I no longer had emotional eating urges. I would feel my emotions and I would know what to do. And food can never take that place. Even, when you have those tough days and you're like, I wish I could just eat. And that would just solve this. Like back in the day, it doesn't work. I cannot do that because the emotion is like, nope, I know what I need and I know you can give it to me and we need to do that process. And I think that's more beautiful because you're more deeply connecting to yourself, what you actually need and what's authentic for you versus using a band-aid. So as I've shared all of this, what is going to shift this pattern if it's not willpower? And it's going to be a multi-layered approach, because we can't just throw food away. We need to have food in our lives. And because we've had this unhealthy pattern with it, using it to cope, it can be a little scary navigating. But food is also the doorway, the gateway to seeing our pattern. And so when I'm working with clients, I see this playing out. And we work through this framework. So we start off with true nourishment. And this is about getting to know your body and nourishing it so that it feels satisfied with meals, not following diet rules or diet restrictions, because those can also trigger you into binging when you restrict yourself. And so once we start nourishing the body, it becomes easier to see when we're truly hungry versus emotionally hungry. And we can use that as a doorway to go deeper into what's actually happening. We're also looking at your body. So body acceptance is key. A lot of my clients, they get triggered by body shame. They also don't take care of their body. So if you're not sleeping enough, it's going to make you be more susceptible to overeating the next day, because your hormones are going to be imbalanced. Your ghrelin is going to increase. You're going to want more food. And so we need to look at these different factors that are impacting your eating. It's not just only emotional eating. There are physiological things happening in your body. So we've got taking care of your body, accepting its needs for rest, for movement, without pushing it into the shame level. And then you're also accepting your physical body, because if you start shaming yourself when you walk past a mirror, it's going to trigger emotional eating. And then we use that to help ground the body, but looking at the triggers. And then we go into the emotional wellness piece. And this is where we use those triggers to get to the root of what has been calling out to you, what has been saying, I need food to feel okay, and start shifting the pattern at a body level where you are now not putting food in, you're getting to the root and resolving it, getting to those emotions and meeting your emotional needs so that you're no longer using food as a band-aid. And from here, what organically comes through is not just your emotional needs, but boundaries you might need to set, places you need to have limits. You know, one of my clients, Kelly, after doing this process, we realized that she needed to have boundaries at work. She would get taken advantage, and, you know, coworkers would want her to do extra work. And even though she'd say no, they'd keep coming at her. She needed to be firm in her boundaries. Another one of my clients, she had this realization as well around family members, that she needed to have certain boundaries because they were impacting the way she felt about herself. And so this is so key and important. We need to meet our emotional needs, but we're going to get those organic needs and boundaries. Maybe we need to rest. Maybe we need to take some time. And that's going to help us, because we will not keep putting food on top of it. We will actually meet those true needs, and we won't have those urges for food anymore. And so this process is not a quick fix, and I don't suggest you try to bypass it. You might need to put in a bit more effort at first, but this becomes effortless. So when I was on my journey with emotional eating, I spent many years moving through this process, and my clients get to move through it in a shorter amount of time. The Emotional Eating Evolution program, where all of this, where this framework lives, is a 12-week container. And a lot of clients can get results within that time. And those that need additional support, we keep going, but they have the process of what they need to do. And so while it took me many years, and I don't regret it because it's so embodied and ingrained, and it's been over 10 years since I've emotionally eaten, I wouldn't give that up for the world, because I don't have to stress about food or my body, and I know what to do to take care of it. And it's not this mental clutter or this noise in my head that took up so much space, that takes up a lot of space. And I hear this from clients when we do this work. It's like, oh my God, there's no more noise in my head about food. Like, there's just space. And imagine what you could do with that space. And imagine how much more ease and peace you would feel. And so if what I'm sharing with you today is resonating, just know that you're not broken. Your body hasn't been betraying you. You just learn to cope. And there is a way to actually meet your true needs. So you're not coping, you're actually living your life. So coping is when you're in survival. And when you live your life, you're more present. And that naturally gives you more ease and peace in your body, and in your body, around food, in your life. And so this is the work we do inside of the Emotional Eating Evolution program. And so I help ambitious women get to ease and peace and confidence around food and in their body. And if this is resonating for you and you are looking for more support, you can find out more about the program at the links below. Or if you'd like to get started with one of the first steps that I give to my clients, you can check out the free guide that I have, What Are You Truly Hungry For?, to start catching your triggers and discerning true from emotional hunger. And if this video has helped you feel seen and understood, please let me know in the comments below. If you have any questions, please let me know as well. Thank you so much for watching. I look forward to sharing more with you, and I hope you have a great day.